Hello and welcome to the Practical Animal channel. This channel is for you if you love animals and want to work with them. The next question is, do you want to work with wild or domestic animals? If domestic, do you want to work with pet animals, dogs and cats, or others? Or do you want to work with agricultural animals? If you want to work with wild animals, do you want to work with wild animals in captivity or in the wild? Today's guest is Julian Ford, who is the owner of Huxley's Bird of Prey Centre and Gardens. And he's going to tell us what it takes to run a bird of prey centre. Julian, welcome to the channel.
Thank you.
Julian, first of all, can you tell us about this marvellous bird on your fist?
Well, this is one of our Harris hawks. We have a big team of Harris hawks. This one is my oldest, bred here at the centre some 22 years ago. And he's looking a little bit dirty today because he's been out flying all morning and it's been wet and muddy. And he's been doing this for 22 years and I'm never going to stop him. He still loves his flying. He'll do the hunting in the field. He'll do displays. He'll go to schools. He does the whole lot. And he's always done it. Very proud of little Khan. His name is Khan. And I say a very, very old a male Harris hawk anyway. Females can live longer, but he's feeling his years a little bit, like I am indeed myself. And he likes to get nice and dirty when he goes out in the countryside. So I'm not going to sort of stop him doing that. So that's one of the Harris hawks that we have here.
Julian, how did you come to be the owner of Huxley's Bird of Prey Centre? Please tell us your story, how you came to be working with birds of prey.
Well, it's a bit of a long story, but I'll give it a go. Okay, I started off in horticulture. And I trained as a gardener. And then I was very fortunate, worked up to head gardener and then estate manager of a couple of big estates. So I've done it all. But of course, working like that fitted in very well with my passion of animals. Always kept cats and dogs anyway. And the birds of prey crept in some 50 years ago, whereby I was breeding I started with finches and budgerigars, believe it or not. And then quickly went over to somebody brought to me an injured kestrel or barn owl, something like that they had found. In those days, no way could I find the food. It's all frozen these days. Of course, we buy it in bulk. But I had to go out in the garden every day to catch something. I knew nothing about birds of prey. But it did spark an interest. So with my career of horticulture and estate management, it seemed to fit in quite well. And I started keeping birds of prey. So all those years ago, in with my work, I kept the birds. It went on from there. I mean, basically, one of the big estates I worked on in Scotland, we had a bird of prey section and we had a couple of big European eagle owls, which was sponsored by one of the big jewelers in Scotland. And it sparked even more interest. I thought, well, I've got to start this. I've got to do this. I've got to do it. So I started buying my first Harris hawk that I ever purchased was way up in North Wales. And that was going back some 40 odd years ago. It cost me £650, which was a lot of money then. And that, of course, went on from there with the birds of prey, particularly Harris hawks. They're amazing birds. There's no centre in the country that would be without the Harris hawks. So amazing birds. So we have a big team of them, as I say. It went from there whereby I gradually added to the collection. And it got to the point where I was very fortunate where I was in one of the places where I was estate manager, that I had a 2-acre walled garden, given over to some vegetables, but mainly my birds. And I was able to build aviaries. I opened to the public on weekends, whereby they used to come and see my birds flying, which was absolutely amazing. And I got to the point where I thought, well, do I keep up with the gardening, which was a good job, well paid, everything paid for me, including staff cars and all that. Or do I make the break and do something with the birds of prey? And the place I'm currently in had been derelict for many, many years. The house had been empty for many, many years. And I started building. Now, up in Horsham here, when I applied, I understood I had to have a zoo license, which is fair enough. When I approached the council, they'd never done anything like that before. So although I was supposed to have a zoo license before I even opened, I opened for several months before they got their act together and said, okay, you get the inspection, we're going to do it, the vet inspection, all that sort of thing. And they issued me with a zoo license, which I've had ever since. So it took a lot of getting together, whereby they'd never had this area. Would it support a bird of prey centre for a start? Which was a little bit worrying, because I thought, if we don't get anybody in, you know, my idea was to stay here at the centre, have the public coming in and showing them what we could do with the birds, particularly education, all that sort of thing, which is very high on our list. But I found quickly that I had to do shows out, and we do a lot of the big shows now where we take our team of birds along, or a team of birds along, and start flying at the shows. And that obviously generates interest. Birds of prey need careful looking at and looking after these days. There's a lot of persecution going on with the birds of prey, even red kites in that country now. You know, so we've heard some horrific stories of what's happening with them, which is very, very sad. So we have a nice big collection of birds here. And I'm into falcons myself, and falcons are my passion. I've got probably 30 falcons and I love them. But we've got things like, we've got the pygmy falcons right up to a golden eagle hybrid. So we've got big stuff as well. And the reason I've got this one on my gloves today, because he normally sits there quite well, particularly after he's been flying. He's a little bit tired because he's getting a bit old, and he'll sit there for hopefully some considerable time. He likes the company, you know. Basically, I was his dad, you know, so therefore he's been with me all this time. So he's a very special little hawk. So from there, yes, I opened up here. I opened up Good Friday 1993. It had its ups and downs. Shall I carry on and say about what it needs to take a bird of prey centre? It's dedication mainly. It's the birds, they have to come first. And for the first few years, it was tough going. Could we get the people in? Did we have enough people to feed the birds, basically? You know, I mean, we needed to buy the food for the birds. So we have a delivery of food once a month, which is generally okay. We keep it in the freezers, obviously. They have to eat raw meat. And it's the dedication and the side of it that people perhaps don't see. Ups and downs, certainly. Yes, we lose birds occasionally. That's natural. We always blame ourselves. We think, well, hang on, what's gone wrong? Why has that bird died? But then you look at the paperwork and think, oh, gosh, it was so old. It's lived far longer than it ever would as a wild bird. It's had a good life, you know. I mean, I flew a little peregrine tearsel, a male peregrine. His name was Norman. And he was named after Norman Bates in Psycho, because that's what he was. And he was flying here one afternoon at 24 years old. And he dropped out of the sky dead when he hit the ground. Now, that's the way to go. So many people have these birds and they think, oh, let's retire them. Let's put them in an aviary and forget about them because they deserve a rest. I like to keep, if my birds want to do it, that is, like this one does, I like to keep my birds flying basically forever until the last day if I can, as they would as a wild bird. So little Norman went on, but he'd enjoyed himself up to that very, very last minute. I was flying him all those years. He was an amazing bird, one speed, and that was flat out. He didn't know how to slow down. So, you know, that's the sort of thing I look for when I'm flying my birds, something that wants to do it. Not because they're hungry, nothing. People think we have to starve these birds to get them flying. No way. You build up a bond, particularly with the falcons. You build up a bond with the bird, whereby they want to fly for you. You turn them loose. That's the way it works. We fly with GPS transmitters on, of course. We can track all our birds wherever they are. That only came in fairly recently, 3 or 4 years ago. But we were using traditional transmitters up to that point where it points the right direction, approximate distances you can work out over a period of time. And then you went tramping after your bird if it didn't come back. And that includes Harris hawks. Occasionally they'll chase something for quite a long way. So this one's quite content now. Look, he's preening on the glove. That's what I like to see. He's been out flying. He's quite happy now, having a bit of a preen, and he's content to sit with his dad, basically. So that's what I look for. So with the centre, we worked up. I do rely on our volunteers. I've got a good team of volunteers. We will never, ever make enough money here to pay staff. But we have a terrific band of volunteers, which take it in turns to come in. They give up their time. There's a lot of cleaning. The main thing with this bird of prey centre, like most zoo work, if you like, is cleaning. There's mess everywhere. These birds eat raw meat. You can understand it. It can get a little bit messy and smelly at times, but people are quite happy to give up their time and come and clean. Fresh water every day, of course, so that's important. Birds of prey don't drink a lot, but they do need to bathe regularly. And this one, hopefully, we'll have a bath later. when I put him back, because he is quite muddy from this morning. So that's the sort of work we look for the volunteers to do, and they're happy to do it. They get rewarded by moving on to train and fly a bird. Some of our volunteers don't want to do that much. They don't want to stand on the lawn and fly a falcon. However, they'll fly an owl. They'll fly a hawk. Falcons are quite different because they have to be trained to lure, swung lure, and some people can't get that coordination to swing a lure. And that's what you need to do if you're going to fly a falcon. It's part and parcel of it that the volunteers come in. They do the cleaning, but they hopefully get rewarded by the fact they spend time with some of my birds. I do have a lot of birds and they need looking after. Some of them like certain people. I have imprint falcons. So just explain to people watching if they're not quite sure that it means simply that I've hand reared them. They open their eyes, they see me, I'm dad. And that will continue for life. So they're brilliant with me, generally speaking. But then as they get adult, they think, well, hang on, do we love everybody? No, we don't. And they'll have a serious go at some of the people if they don't like them. There's a couple of my falcons that nobody else will pick up except me, because they will not tolerate anybody else getting near them, which is fine while I'm around. You know, I've got an eagle like that as well. I've got a battler eagle, totally hand-reared and imprinted. But his name's Seymour. He's a battler or an African snake eagle. Absolutely adorable. Been doing it. He likes his kisses, cuddles, you know, but he doesn't like it from other people, which we have to accept. We make them like that. But generally speaking, the birds are well behaved. And as long as we treat them right, they reward us by wanting to fly and coming back to us. You know, we could put a transmitter on a bird, don't bring them back. And people, when the GPS first come out for the falcons, to say a few years ago now, we were very lucky. We did get it quite early, as soon as it came out. But people are using it, and they think people that perhaps have got their first bird. Oh well, we got GPS. We can put that on a bird. Doesn't matter if it goes off because we can find it. You've still got to do all that training to start with, because if you haven't trained the bird and it's got GPS, yes, you can track it, but it sees you coming, it'll keep flying. So it's still got all the same basic training to get that bird flying and coming back to you when it's whistled or called, whatever it might be, back to a swung lure, a drag lure, a dummy bunny or something for a hawk or an eagle. But you've still got to do all that. The GPS helps us enormously. It makes you wonder how we manage without it. But going back to Norman, my old peregrine falcon, he never had a transmitter on him for 24 years of his life. I never lost him, ever. Did he ever go off? He never went off. It was amazing. Looking back, I think I was very, very lucky not to have him go off at any point. But he was dedicated to me. He was so with me all the time that he didn't want to go off. He wanted to come back to me, you know, although he wasn't even an imprint. I trained him from a parent reared bird. So it does vary, and it's the dedication. So if somebody wants to keep birds of prey, you need the time, the effort put in. They can't be left and neglected. If you ever want to fly a bird, it's the time you spend with them manning them. Manning is the important thing. In other words, a young bird, I always say, don't get an older bird from somebody if you don't know what the bird has done. It never works. I take half my falcons have been given to me by people who can't manage them. Some of them can be an absolute nightmare. So the idea is to get a young bird from a well-known or good breeder, look into it, read all the books, take a course, be a volunteer at a centre. That's what we say, be a volunteer at a centre that's near you if you can, to learn what you can before you get your own bird. It's a big thing. It's a big commitment. So you end up getting a young bird and the manning process starts. That means literally, like obviously this one's fully manned, as you see, very relaxed, preening away here. But you start off with a mad bird, if you like, sitting on your glove, hanging upside down, doesn't want to be with you. Why does it want to be with you? It's come out of an aviary, probably most likely from the parents. And you're totally alien. They don't want to be with you. So that's when the patience has to kick in. A lot of patience is required. The bird has to learn to trust you. And the first thing you do is hopefully get it to feed on the glove. You jest it up, you put the anklets on, the jested, swivel, leash, whatever it might require. No, I haven't got any food, no. And they all look over this side because they know where the food is, see? They know food can come out this pocket. That's how they all learn that very quickly. So the bird is manned. It hang upside down, maybe 2, 3, 4 days. particularly if it's a young falcon. And dare I say it, at this stage, the females can be more difficult. They are more headstrong, and they're bigger than the males. We have to bear that in mind. The females can be a lot bigger than the male counterparts. So therefore, they want to do what they want to do, and that's not be with you. If you can hood a young falcon to start with, that's a big advantage. So we have a couple of falcons. Generally with my falcons, because they're seriously so well behaved, I do not hood many falcons. It's traditional to have a hood to go on a falcon. So if you're out hunting, you're out on the moors, whatever it might be with your falcons hunting, traditionally, you wouldn't have a 4x4 to take you to the spot where you happen to be flying that day. Nowadays, we're lazy and do that. But you would have a hood on the falcons. You'd have a cadge of falcons. It's where so many of our sayings today comes from falconry. A cadge a lift. It means it's basically an oblong frame, if you like, rectangular frame, with a falcon sat on each corner with their hoods on, tethered, obviously. And you have a cadge carrier. The cadge carrier would have stepped inside, 2 leather straps over his shoulder. Off we'd go across wherever you were going to fly, and he would carry the cadge to wherever you were going to fly. One falcon would be released at a time. Hood would be taken off. We'd have a look around. Off we'd go and have a flight. And then he'd hopefully come back. He might catch something which you'd retrieve. You'd get the bird back. Then the second one possibly would have a fly. So catching a lift literally comes from falconry. But the manning process is the most important thing you'd ever do with a bird in its life. It has to trust you. If that bird doesn't trust you, you've lost to start with. Some of them can take a lot longer. You can settle a bit more. There's nothing over there. There's no food in here. It's the wrong area. Sorry about that. I have to talk to him so he keeps him calm. If he does play up, we will move him back to his perch. The manning could go on for several days, even longer, depending on the bird. But once they've learnt to stand on the glove, you put a little bit of food on the glove between their feet. You might even be able to touch their feet. They'll be looking at you. Now, the moment they take their eyes off of you to look at that food, that's the first stumbling block over. It means they're trusting you a little bit. They'll take their eyes off of you in case you make a sudden move. And do they want the food? Probably not to start with. But then they'll pick it up and they'll throw it on the floor. Okay, to start. They've picked up the bit of food, they've thrown it on the floor. And not long after that, they'll think, well, yeah, we're getting a bit hungry. We're getting a bit hungry. Yes, we'll have a peck at that little bit of food. And it goes from there. That manning process, generally, once they've learned to do that, built up quite quickly. It's a case of making sure they are beginning to trust you. And once that starts happening, you're wandering around with them. You may be going showing them other birds. You may be doing anything with walking around the place, walking around the acres, whatever it might be. So they're getting used to sights and sounds. See, things they've never seen before. Then it's a case of going on the Creants training line. We've got a training area out there on the lawn whereby they sit on a post, on the training post, which is their safe place. We have a safe place for the bird to sit. They can sit there and look around the whole place thinking, yeah, it's okay out here, not too bad. And then we put them on the Creant. So we take the leash off, providing they're sitting there okay on the post, and we put the Creants on the training line. For a start off, they'll wonder what's going on. They'll probably bait off. They'll run around the floor. They'll flap, whatever it might be. But you're going to encourage them to do that first little tiny jump to the glove. From the perch, a little bit of food on the glove. Very hesitant to start with, but they will eventually jump over. Then you're on your way. That trust normally with most birds, not all, but most, because some can be very difficult, they will build up that trust to jump to the glove. You extend that distance. Now, things like house hawks, very, very intelligent birds. They learn quickly. And once they start learning, they're on their way. Generally speaking, they're that good. That's why house hawks are so very, very popular. And you could be getting them down the lawn, 12, 20 foot, 30 foot, whatever it might be, within a day or two. Then there comes a time when they're chasing you down the lawn, you can't get away from them. You introduce them to a lure. Again, it's no good turning the bird loose and they don't want to come back to your glove. They might come back to the post because they regard that as a safe perch, because they look around. So you've got to lure. Now with a house hawk, it will be a dummy bunny. Basically a thing that looks like a body of a rabbit, if you like, that you drag along the ground, little white tail on, that's the important thing. And where the head of the rabbit would be a little bit of food tied. And you drag that down the lawn, and they think, oh, don't like that. And they could be really afraid to start with. So you put a nice big garnish, a big piece of food, whole day or chick, whatever it might be, on where the head of the rabbit will be. You drop it up their feet, and they'll walk over and tentatively touch it, and they run away. They are that nervous. It's not natural for them to want to take what's offered like that. But these catch on quick. Most birds do. Eagles do. But the Harris hawk, say, seeing that he's sat here, I'll talk about him. The Harris hawks are brilliant birds. They learn very quickly. And before you know it, you put them on the perch when they're flying to the Gulliver times. You put them back on the perch, you get the rabbit and you run down the lawn. They're flying behind you so fast. They've caught on. Now, when they start chasing you down the lawn like that, I always say, right, time to turn them loose. See what they do. There has to come that. Now, with the quickest I've ever trained a Harris hawk from out of an avian flying free in the woods, believe it or not, was 3 days. That's exceptional. And he went off, and within 30 seconds, he caught a rabbit. It's never happened since. You know, it was an old bird of mine called Aztec, and he was absolutely amazing. So, but he just caught on quick. I mean, I don't know why, it just happened with him. But you'd expect 2 or 3 weeks, and you'd hopefully, with a novice flying their first bird, perhaps a Harris hawk, which is the most popular to start with, then you would be hopefully 2 or 3 weeks. You'll take them out into permission. It's no good having a bird unless you've got permission, as we call it. In other words, permission to fly on somebody's ground if you haven't got your own fields. And you've got to approach people sensibly. Say, look, I'd like to fly a hawk here. It might be a falcon in a big field, something like that. You have to get that permission to be able to fly your bird. You can't just fly anywhere. We all say get insurance as well, you know, in case it chases somebody's dog, you never know. So that sort of thing has to be taken in consideration. But that bird, once it's chasing you down the lawn or wherever you're training them at home, it is time for them to want to do more. To give it something like a Harris, intelligent bird like this, they know they can do more and they want to do it. So very quickly you learn that you've got to take them out and get them flying. Again, the transmitter on the bird, you know. We don't use GPS on the hawks. We use the old 173s, which send a signal back, because he's not given over to go like some of my falcons. I'll tell you about one of my falcons in a minute. So, you know, it's important that you've got a transmitter and a bell. They need a bell on them. Again, it's a ringing sound. They're not used to that. Some people leave the bells on permanently. I don't. I always put the bell on with the transmitter, and the birds have the bells on when they fly. And I don't leave bells on permanently. They don't seem to worry about that when it goes on. They know they're going out. It's something exciting. They're having that equipment on. They know they're going to fly. Birds catch on pretty quick. So that's the basic, the very, very basic of training the bird. It's getting the bird. It's getting the bird on the glove so it starts eating a little bit of food on the glove. Everybody does it slightly different. I don't criticize people the way they might do it, but it's important to move on as a bird wants to move on. So put them on the queen, to get them chasing you down the lawn or wherever you're training them at home. Same applies to any of them, really. Once they're flying and chasing you, it's not because you've starved them, as some people seem to imagine. It's the fact that they are trusting you. Think, yeah, he's got a pocket full of food. I want a bit of that food. Or I'm going to him because he's an imprint, it's an imprint, and I want to be with dad or whatever it might be. So there's different ways of looking at it. But they learn quite quickly, particularly a bird like this. They are amazing birds. So that's the very, very basic. So, you know, we always look at all the birds every day. We make sure they're okay. You've got to know your bird. Another point, you've got to know if there's something wrong with your bird. It could be about hook, especially with a bird like this that goes out hunting. Very easily, they can catch a wing on a fence. We have birds occasionally that have had wingtip edema. It's a serious problem for a bird. And if you don't catch it quick, they lose part of their wing, never to fly again out in the country or whatever it might be. So lots to look at, lots of things. Anybody wanting to get into falconry or keeping a bird just in their garden for fun, perhaps an owl flying, whatever it might be, they need to look at it very, very seriously first. It's a long-term thing. You know, when you think a bird like he's, what, 22, 23, 24, without looking at the paper, I'm not quite sure. He's an old male Harris hawk that I bred here, say. Some of the eagles, you're thinking of 45, 50 years plus. Now, I've got a golden eagle hybrid. She's coming up 40 now. Loves me, hates everybody else. She'll kill anybody else that goes near her. You know, it's all good fun. You know, so that's how birds can be. So they can have a good long life compared to their wild lives. I mean, when you think of tawny owl or barn owl in the wild, 3 to 5 years. 5 years would be a reasonable average life for a wild owl like that. We've got one that's 23, 24, so up to 5 times longer. We have some young volunteers here.
Julian, you mentioned the coordination necessary to swing a swung lure to a falcon.
Yes, yes.
If you had to list 5 or 6 core skills, what would they be?
What, throughout all, you mean, or just swing another?
To run a bird of prey centre.
Right, okay, to run a bird of prey centre, right. Wow, passion. You wouldn't do any of this without the passion I have for birds, which hopefully when we do our talks, schools and all that, educational talks, comes over. And people do comment on that, which is really lovely. Particularly when we do the big shows like the Arden Eye Show and things like that, Sandringham Show. People say, well, I didn't know you could get into it and be that passionate. Lovely to hear that. And we do get some lovely comments, which is lovely. It makes us feel good. So passion to start with. Dedication, of course, as I said before, the birds rely on you. You are their life. You are their world, if you like. People criticize sometimes about the birds. Oh, well, should you keep them like that? They're turned loose. Let's be fair. It doesn't matter how much training you do with a bird, what equipment you put on them to track them. If they want to go, they will go, you know. So you've got to treat them. They want to come back to you, you know. So that's the second thing, I guess. Third, running a bird of prey centre, be prepared for a lot of upsets. This last year with the pandemic, we haven't been open much. We're not open now. We don't know when we're going to open. And we are seriously short of finances. The birds come first. They are fed first. You've got to buy good quality food. It's another point. Staple diet of all our birds is frozen day-old chicks. That does more or less have everything in them that birds want. And I've got a barn owl out there that's what, 24, 25 years old, refuses anything all his life except day-old chicks. I'd eat mice, rats. Well, I'm not touching them. Mice are more expensive, but don't want to touch them. But we offer it. We use a lot of quail, particularly this time of year for anything breeding. Quail is first-class food. So you've got to be prepared to put money, if you like, want to a better term, into buying the good food that the birds require. A variety of food is important, a varied diet. So that's another very important point. If a bird refuses something, fine, you can't do anything about that. It's like a child. If they don't want to eat something, forget it. He'll eat anything. Rabbit, he loves rabbit. Squirrel, I've got a chap, a friend of mine, who brings squirrels in quite a lot, grey squirrels. And the birds, particularly eagles, love them. And it's good food. It's very, very nutritious food. Next thing, I guess, running a bird of prey centre, let me think. The right accommodation. We've got all our aviaries. Most of them are half covered. So if a bird wants to sit under cover, of course they can. If they want to sit in the rain, that's down to them. You know, they've got the choice. So you need a number of perches. Most birds of prey will sit at the highest point they can during the night. So the ones under cover are normally higher than the ones outside. A lot of my aviaries have natural trees in. I plant conifers and that in, which of course the birds love, you know. And that's something else that's important, the right accommodation. And looks pleasing to us. Birds don't care really what it looks like, but it looks pleasing to us. So when we have visitors coming in, then they can walk around and say, oh, it does look nice, doesn't it? It really looks nice. Obviously, I'm a horticulturist, that helps of what I do here, you know. So next point, I guess, what can I say? It's difficult, really. We make sure ours have got clean water all the time because they bathe regularly. Very few birds of prey drink regularly. You think, well, they haven't drunk for so long, but they don't need it. They get the moisture from the food they consume, particularly if it's a varied diet, you know. He will have a bath, but will he drink? He won't have a drink. Very rare do I see him drink, but he will bathe regularly. They like to remain clean. They like to be clean. And say you got quite muddy this morning. I didn't bother him. As long as he can clean up later, he'll be absolutely fine. And he's a bit tired at the moment. That's why he's so relaxed with me at the moment as well, to be fair. You come back to lure swinging. Now, we need almost all the birds of prey we fly in display have a lure of one description or another. Now, I've described them for the eagles. hawks. They have a drag dummy bunny, generally speaking. They'll chase that anywhere. We get volunteers running, have races with the hawks, see who gets the furthest before they get caught with the lure, which is great. It's good fun, but the birds love it, of course. They think that's great sport, So, and the other thing is a swan lure. Yes, it's a case of swinging a lure. It's difficult to describe swinging a lure. I'm happy to show anybody how to swing a lure. When you've got 5 falcons in the air together and you're swinging a lure, you've got to be quick. But the most I can manage now is 3. I will be honest, but I've done 5. And it's swinging a lure. It represents something flying through the air that the falcon wants to knock down. If we bear in mind, almost all, but not all, almost all falcons hunt by knocking their prey out of the sky. Pigeons, rooks, magpies, whatever it might be. Pigeons being the main one. And you swing a lure, so it represents something they want to knock down. So you have to swing that lure in such a manner that the bird comes in for it. It's just bringing its talons down to grab it or hit it, and it's moved out of the way, and it goes round for another go. You might have a falcon that will do that 40, 50 times before you give in. It always wins in the end, always wins. The magic word for bringing a falcon back into a lure, they all learn that quite quickly, is the magic word, ho. Just a simple ho, shouted nice and loud, depending how far out the bird is. A ho means, yeah, I can have that next time. Quite a few of my falcons that I fly, I don't shout at all. We know each other too well, and it's absolutely brilliant, when you don't have to shout, you don't have to communicate with them.
Personal qualities, dedication, commitment. If you had to mention 5 or 6 core personal qualities, what would they be to run a bird of prey centre, Julian?
Okay, good questions. Okay, I've been through a couple of them, certainly, but to run a bird of prey centre, you've got to have the right approach. And when you say personal, yes. We have a lady come, she doesn't come in now, but she was coming in, where she got to the point where she was so loud and boisterous at the whole time, birds react. They don't like it. Even with trying to man a falcon on the glove, very, very loud laughter and all that, it doesn't work with the birds, So you need that quiet disposition, I guess, whereby the birds respect it. And you could be nice. I mean, I could say anything to this one, obviously, loud, shout, whatever. So he doesn't take a notice. But generally speaking, with people coming in to my bird of prey centre, wanting, oh, can I pick up a bird? Can I do this? Can I do that? Yes, within reason. But you've got to have a quiet approach. Most important thing of all, if someone's going to pick up one of my birds, is doing the falconry knot, which we teach everybody within the first couple of days of them ever coming in here. And it's something you have to do with the bird sat there. It has to be done one-handed, of course. You need to be able to do it blindfolded, if you like, whereby that bird is secure. We have a lot of birds, and therefore it's being tethered. You've got to do it right. Too long a leash or on a bird, it may reach a bird near it. Too short, I'd rather have that and say, look, it's a bit short on that one. That needs lengthening a bit. Birds will occasionally play with the equipment. Even on the glove, they'll think, I can have this up. I can get this undone. Househawks are intelligent enough to undo a knot occasionally. So again, with a bird sat with one of my volunteers or somebody wanting to run something like this, it's a constant worry, I guess, with volunteers coming in, which given their time up, it's wonderful to have them in. But then they go at the end of the day, no, I'm going to check. I'm one of these, I have to check everything all the time. So it's another aspect of running a bird of prey centre, if you like. You've got to sort of think a little bit ahead and think what that bird may want. Sometimes they'll leave it. They'll put the food in the corner of the egg and think, if you think I'm going to eat that, forget it. But at least you've given them enough. And if the weather's bad, I'd rather overfeed my birds, give them a little bit extra, and not worry about flying them, than have a bird that's so hungry, And a little example of that is, I have Neo. His name's Neo. If you don't mind me talking about him in a minute. He's a Lanneret, which is a male lanner falcon. He's now, coming up 16, 17 years old. I'm the only one who flies him. He's an amazing little falcon. And he is my highest flying falcon, recorded on GPS, of 4,250 feet above me. That's high. But when he does a spiral stoop coming down from that height, it's absolutely incredible. And you remember those flights from a bird like that. It's amazing. He's doing that to please me and himself, not hunting up there. Of course he's not, Last summer, I say this the sort of age he is now, which is getting on a little bit for a little falcon, flies at about 1 pound 2 ounces. I still do pounds and ounces. I don't do grams. And he went off from here one very nice warm afternoon. That bird was in the air without landing, because we know that by GPS, 4¼ hours. He flew 220 miles. And I said to my mate here, I said, we better go after him because he's going to land somewhere and he'll be so worn out. So we went off with the GPS in the van. Off we went. He was back here waiting for me, wasn't he? He knows what he's doing. He was sat on the roof of the house thinking, yeah, I know what I'm doing. But he's always been fit. He's a very fit little falcon, as you can imagine. 6 weeks ago, I weighed him one morning and it dropped alarmingly. His weight had really dropped. No apparent reason. He was having his normal amount of food. He looked sad, if you want. I don't know how best to describe it. He didn't look himself, because I know he's in very, very well, of course. But I don't normally allow birds in the house. I don't like them in the house, you know, especially with my cat and that sort of thing. But he went up in the spare room in the warm. I gave him his food. He was nice and warm. Several days. But what was happening, he was vomiting. He was bringing up the food. That's a bad sign. But normally means they're on their way out. And at his age, I thought, well, okay. Anyway, 2 days later, he was stuffing the food in. He was having chicks and mice, because he loves mice. And he started putting the weight on, because he went below 1 pound, which for him is alarming. He's now up 1 pound 5½ ounces, the heaviest been all his life. He's never been that heavy. And that's the important thing with the bird of prey centre here. The birds are weighed regularly. You can feel down their keel bone. You know, they've got that keel bone whereby they can feel very thin. They can feel flat-chested, whereby they're overweight, you know. So we can learn a lot by knowing our birds and touching them like that. But we do weigh regularly. You know, I've got a friend of mine who has a bird of prey centre. He doesn't use scales. Great, if he knows his birds well enough. Everybody does it different. But with the staff I have here, I like to make sure birds are weighed. And if I'm in doubt, I weigh it again, or I might give it an extra meal, whatever it might be. So that's an important point with the bird, the weight. Little kestrels. A male kestrel can be 6.5 ounces. So little weight. A female, 8.5 ounces. There's a big difference between the two. My smallest falcons here are my pygmy falcons. 2.5 ounces. They are absolutely minute. But, you know, it's important, especially in the weather we might be having, that they are weighed or fed regularly if you're not weighing them. If they're an aviary bird, they're just fed very, very well, you know. But the pygmy falcons have heat as well, to be honest. Are you losing interest? You can see the Harris Fox now beginning to turn around. He thinks, what's going on out there? I need to be out there. I might have to put him down in a minute, but we'll see how it goes. So does that help a little bit?
Yeah, it does. Yeah. So I'm trying to summarize the skills and the qualities needed to run a centre. So patience, commitment, manual dexterity to put the telemetry on. What about people skills? Do the volunteers need to have people skills to deal with the public?
Yeah, that's important. I'm glad you brought that point up. That's the way it works. People skills, yes, it's very important. You've got to be able to say the right thing at the right time and not upset people. Simple as that.
How important would you say in running a bird of prey centre is basic literacy? Sounds silly, but for writing a business plan or applying for a zoo license?
I hate forms. Yeah, you've got to be able to fill in the forms.
How would you describe the bird of prey centre as an industry today, Julian?
As a general with all?
Yes.
Yeah. Quite a few people have been trying to start up the last few years, found it too difficult to obtain a zoo license, and they've given up before they've even opened. How
do you see, Julian, the bird of prey centre industry progressing into the future? For example, do you see that all bird of prey centres ought to have at least a few breeding pairs of lugger falcons or Asian vultures, for example?
Good question. Yeah, I think generally speaking, there's bird of prey centres now that really have gone in 90% breeding. And they'll have people in, they're open to the public, but it's the breeding that they're concentrating on. It's great providing they're doing the breeding with the right sort of birds. Now, lugger falcons over here, yes. Most centres now have lugger falcons. Private individuals, a couple of well-known falconers, if you like, or breeders, have got lugger falcons to breed.
So for somebody who is thinking of setting up their own bird of prey centre, have you anything else that you'd like to add, Julian? For example, the importance of locating a good avian veterinary surgeon.
Yeah, that's true. Well, okay. I would say no, don't set up a bird of prey centre now. Simple as that. It's not easy. I know a couple of people have tried 4 or 5 years ago, and they both, as I said, they failed because there was so much involved. The expense is unbelievable. Setting up the aviaries, getting it the right entry, public, all that sort of thing. Every facility you might need for the public, or the birds, or yourselves, that sort of thing. Colossally expensive now. Plenty of birds to purchase, generally, depending on what you wanted to go into.
Julian Ford, owner of Huxley's Bird of Prey Centre and Gardens, thank you very much for being on the Practical Animal Channel.
Thank you very much for inviting me, and I thoroughly enjoyed talking to you. Thank you very much. Wait, boy, do you want to go back?